Hey everyone, I'm Amethescent, and today I will be reimagining my past art. I got the idea for this when I accidentally stumbled upon a large stack of my old art as I was going through some of my stuff, which was surprising because I remember drawing a lot, but I don't remember drawing that much. I picked out a bunch that I thought would be fun to reimagine and tried my best to sort them in order from earliest to latest, based on the level of drawing I thought each one was at. Throughout this video, and the next, I'll be redrawing those pieces in that order. The oldest piece I could find that I wanted to redraw was this one, of a girl holding a sword. But the strangest part about this piece is that I found two more that are extremely similar. I didn't date any of my old art, or any of my new art for that matter, so I don't know how much time passed between each. However, I can say for certain that they were drawn at different times in my art journey. Notice the way I draw hair in this version compared to the other two. This was from a false belief that, in order to draw hair, I had to depict as many strands as possible, which is just not true. You can see that the other two don't have this problem, and the third one just has an overall better grasp of anatomy than the other two. Plus, the character design for girl number 3 is much more unique and interesting, indicating a more experienced approach. But back to the drawing. As you can see, I decided to draw all 3 into one piece, which took much longer than I expected it to, but I think it ended up looking okay in the end. For some reason, while I was drawing this, I struggled a lot with drawing the torsos for these girls, which was weird because I've drawn similar poses several times before with no trouble. And it's especially odd because I didn't have nearly as much trouble with the next drawing. So, I don't know. I guess I was just really struggling that day. You'll see that at some point, I redraw the middle girl's pose because I just really wasn't feeling it. If you couldn't tell, I was trying to go for a triangular composition, and having the middle girl facing to the left didn't really fit in with that, so I redrew her facing forward. Now I'm going to talk about the backstory I created for them as I was drawing this. The girl in the middle is the only girl old me actually gave a name to, and that name is Pierce. I don't know if I chose that name because it sounded cool, or because she holds a sword, and it's some kind of pun. I'm just going to assume that it was a combination of both. I decided to make these 3 girls sisters, with Pierce being the oldest. Pierce is the heir to a warfaring country. Or, at least, she was. That was before her parents perished at the hands of another kingdom. A kingdom that celebrated their newfound victory by taking over Pierce's country. This was followed up by Pierce and her sisters being thrown out of their castle, stripping them of their royal status. All this happening when they were very young. They roamed the streets as orphans for about a year, driven only by their grief, their anger, and their love for each other. As the oldest of the 3, Pierce was forced to take on a more mature and parental role, despite being a child herself. After a year of this, the 3 were found and taken in by a secret organization. A secret organization whose name I haven't decided on yet. Just imagine it's something really cool sounding and unique. This organization was a highly secretive and powerful one that trains recruits to become highly effective fighters. In exchange for their support, at least one of the sisters must train under this organization. Pierce takes it upon herself to do this, though her sisters soon follow within another year. Pierce is the most serious of the 3, as well as the calmest and most disciplined. After all, she had plenty of practice with that when she first took on the role of a parent. Growing up, she proved to be an excellent strategist and an expert at her weapon of choice, a great sword. She has no problem killing if she needs to, but has always been in favor of a quick and painless death. She is the unofficial leader of the 3, and her 2 sisters look up to and respect her greatly. On a bit of a side note, while I was drawing this, I felt there was something missing to Pierce's design, that there needed to be something more, and that's what sparked the idea of flowers. I thought that it would be cool if I could incorporate a flower motif into each girl's design. Maybe that's a staple of the secret organization. When your training is done, you get to choose a flower that you feel represents you, and you would wear the mark of that flower as a badge of pride and an indication of your success. For Pierce, I was originally thinking of making her flower the rose, mainly because I imagined her design to be very red-focused. And what flower do most people think of when they think of red? Roses. But upon researching it and remembering that roses usually represent themes of love, romance, and passion, I realized that didn't exactly fit what I was going for. Roses are too cliche anyway. So I did some research on different kinds of red flowers and their meanings and settled on the poppy. And if you didn't know, poppies, specifically opium poppies, can be highly toxic. This is due to several natural compounds contained within them that can have rather severe and deadly side effects. Basically, don't eat any unprocessed ones in large quantities. I thought that this flower was perfect for Pierce, especially considering the flower's connection to sacrifice and war. They're perfect for her. Now on to the other two, which I decided to name Cana and Blade. You can remember which one is which because Cana is holding a staff, hence the name Cana, and Blade has, well, a blade. I wanted to keep with the theme of them having names related to their weapon, since that seemed to be what I was going for when old me named Pierce. That's why their names are so on the nose. Cana is the middle child and by far the softest of the three. She was never really a fan of violence and feels nauseous at the sight of blood, but that doesn't make her any less of an asset in fighting. At a young age, Cana chose a staff as her weapon, because a staff is less likely to draw any blood and can deal swift and effective blows. She's never killed anyone and never plans to, preferring to knock people out by giving them a good bonk on the head. On the surface, Cana may seem innocent and naive, but deep down she knows about the true horrors of the world. But she values the power of positive thinking and employs this belief whenever possible in order to keep her sister's spirits up. She'll often be the one to express gentle encouragement, and she's the only one that can never seem to be put down. For Cana, lilac was the flower I chose for her. Or, I suppose, canonically, she picked it for herself. But from a behind-the-scenes standpoint, I chose lilac because Cana's original character design seemed to be the most feminine of the three, with her long, flowy dress and soft, round eyes. The first color that came to mind when thinking about this was lilac, and lo and behold, lilac just so happens to be a flower as well. And as a flower that represents purity and innocence, I thought it would be fitting. Blade is the youngest of the three, and by far the most brash. Maybe you could attribute that to immaturity. Being the youngest, Blade's older sisters would often try to shield her from the horrors of the world the best they could. However, Blade took this as them hiding things from her and thinking her weak. So Blade always felt a need to prove herself worthy, which would lead to the occasional outburst. I imagine Blade to be the kind of person to run straight toward danger, without thinking, brandishing her sword above her head and unleashing a battle cry. She's a hot-headed girl who burns hard and fast. For Blade, I picked the fuchsia as her flower, which I didn't even know was a flower before this video. I thought it was just a color, but apparently it's also a flower, and a rather unique-looking one at that. Fuchsias represent confidence, boldness, and individuality, which I think are perfect for Blade. So, here's the finished product. I really like how it turned out, as well as the backstories that came out with the three sisters. I wonder what old me would think about this. I wonder if she'd like it. Before I start talking about the next couple of drawings, I thought I'd mention something that I discovered while working on this video. With the stack of art that I randomly found, there were a lot of characters I had completely forgotten about. And that got me wondering, how many characters do I have? So I looked through my photos and saw that I have over 100 original characters, which was appalling. And that's only counting the ones I have recorded in my photos. Apparently, I have a ton of old art that I had completely forgotten about that I never photographed. Even now, I feel like I miscounted. 100 is a lot, and I still can't believe it. But it makes sense. I do like to make characters, to the point where it might be a bit of a problem. I've got nothing if not experience, huh? The next piece I'll be reimagining is this one. She's a cat burglar. Get it? But she's a cat girl, and she's wearing a thieves' mask. Genius, I know. I really pulled out my most creative idea when I drew this all those years ago. Since having a literal cat burglar is kind of silly, I decided to make this character silly as well. I imagine drawing Miss Fugitive inside a house at night, doing what thieves do best, thieving. I initially wanted to draw her in some kind of action pose, like descending from the ceiling heist style. But that's far too serious, and kitty larceny is not the serious type of cat. I thought it would be fun to draw her in a sort of manga-like style, since I imagine her personality to be similar to some of the exaggerated personalities you might see in anime. I thought I'd depict Mittens McSteely successfully stealing something and then immediately getting caught. Now, at this point, you may be wondering why I keep referring to Miss Kitty Nap as something different every time I mention her. Well, it's quite simple. You see, a super cool and expertly thief such as Madame Meowcenary here deserves an equally cool codename. However, Lady Pounce-A-Lot simply can't decide on just one, so she constantly comes up with new ones, desperately searching for the perfect fit. Growing up as a cat girl comes with a lot of perks. The combination of cat-like reflexes and the brilliance of a human mind leads to a lot of career opportunities that any normal, non-cat human might struggle to do as well as a cat person could. One such career is burglary. As a young kitten, Kitty Kate Purr would often watch those cartoons that show bad guys being caught and defeated by the good guys. But she wouldn't root for the good guys, oh no. She'd root for the bad guys. She always thought that they had the coolest gadgets, outfits, and plans. That coolness, combined with her black and white striped tail, which was obviously a sign of her future career, made her vow to become the best thief when she grew up. Fortunately for her, Sticky Paws was able to join a thieving organization as a mere trainee when she came of age. Unfortunately, she's not very good at stealing. You would think a cat girl would be an expert at stepping lightly through the darkened hallways of an empty home with no trouble. But contrary to what the name The Velvet Paw might imply, this cat girl is anything but good at her job, leaving her to be in the trainee stage of the organization for many years. After several years of this, Whisker Snatcher believed herself to be finally ready for something real, despite what the organization said. So, one night, she snuck out to try and steal something, and she succeeded, much to her own surprise, as she had never successfully stolen something before. Unfortunately, she was immediately caught, and that is what is being depicted in these speed paints. The mugshot piece was an idea that was given to me by my brothers. I was originally only planning to do the one piece, but I thought that the second one would be a nice addition. And that's all. Here are the pieces again, in case you wanted to take another look at them. I had a lot of fun with this, despite my sarcasm. But I always have fun when it comes to things like these. I've just always loved to compare my current self to my old self to see how much I've changed and improved. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and please consider liking and subscribing to see more of my content. Take care and farewell.